Good morning. How is everyone today? Hi, this is Anna Walker with Anna Walker Designs and StabThingsIntoExistence.com. And who even is this person without purple hair? Um, like many of you, my hair is a work in progress over these times of not being able to go out and choosing not to go out. Thankfully, my future daughter in law cuts hair. She's a hairstylist, and she has come over and done my hair for me here at my house. And as a bonus, I get to spend and see my little granddaughter. So that's a blessing in disguise. And since I haven't been this hair color for 30, 40 years, I'm going to live with it for a while. It seems like a radical thing to do instead of the purple and fuchsia and copper that I usually go for. I'm going to live with this for a while and see if it takes. Who knows? Um, Today we're going to talk about embellishing your feltings and what you can do to add some extra texture and dimension to things that you felted, whether they are sculptural pieces, whether they are paintings, whether they are garments. They can all be embellished with stitches, with beads, with sequins, with the addition of specialty fibers, all kinds of things. And why did I come up with this for today? Well, last week I got an order from the Pendleton Wool Company's mill outlet store, and part of what I ordered were selvage edges and trimmings. And the trimmings that I got, some of them were connected to another trimming. It's where they added on, another piece of the felt so that they can continue production, but they can't use this. And as I was pulling the stitches apart, I thought, oh my gosh, that would make an amazing textured center for a ginormous flower. And I just started thinking about textures and dimensions. And then if I cut it in half, wow, I can have this for the other center of another flower. And so it's about using things in a very different way and looking at things in a different way. So these are going to be huge flowers. And I love the texture from just trimming the stitching between the pieces. Um, Here's another one. It's a shorter one, and you can see the yellow and the blue there between the stitches, and I think that is going to make for a beautiful textured flower. So it's thinking the next step. Felt can appear very um, flat and undimensional sometimes, especially if you don't have the opportunity to use things like silk fibers or bamboo fibers or milk fibers. All of those things can add a sheen and add a shimmer. Firestar and Angelina are man-made fibers that can add sparkle and pop to a piece. And if you're not able or you don't have a source for those things, it can be difficult to have your felt sort of come alive and take a new look and look a little bit more dimensional. So I wanted to show you today a couple things that I'm working on right now and something that a friend of mine did, my bestie, and give you some ideas for things that you can use for you know going that next step on your projects. First thing I'm going to show you is what my best friend Barb did for a competition. She asked if I could make her a cord, and this is just a felted cording that she then wrapped around, this head figure, stitched together, and then she added this beautiful bit of bling. Barb is a beater extraordinaire, and her textures and colors that she added just make this felt cording pop something fierce as a headpiece. And it was just a beautiful way. She did it for a bead challenge that they had. They all got, similar components, and it was what they could do with those components. And she wanted some cording so that she could do this headpiece. It's too small for my fat head, but it's a beautiful example of, something that you can do to add some texture and dimension to a simple cording. I've got another one laid out. This is another cording that I created and felt it up. I've got it pinned down so that I can start stitching it. This will be a fascinator. And this is going to have beading or sequins or lucite findings added to it to make it pop. Now, I've got another fascinator hiding underneath here. Again, this is from cording, and this is two different cordings that I've stitched together to create all of the loops and the texture and dimension for the actual fascinator itself. But I wanted to add some additional texture. And so what I did was I took some coordinating colors of locks to just add that little bit of fun and texture. Sorry, I'm working on the computer today instead of on my tablet and instead of my iPad, and it makes it I got to remember where the camera is. But you see how just adding that bit of curl and fluff to a fairly flat looking cording here just brings it and pops it out a little bit. Now this isn't finished. I'm going to add some sparkle in the form of beads. Haven't just figured out yet which beads I'm going to utilize. But these will be some pieces that will be available this fall. I'm hoping to have a show this fall. I talked to a fellow artist friend over the weekend who was showing her art quilts in the Noto area of Topeka, and she is going to talk to the gallery owner and say, hey, you really need to talk to Anna. So I'm hoping that come this fall, we'll have some pieces available at the gallery, whether it's that gallery or another place. But I am furiously working on a lot of things right now, but some of them are finishing things up that have been in the shop for a little while now that need to be finished up. So that gives you an idea for what you can do for that kind of thing. I'm going to show the painting here in a second, and it's a painting that I did at the workshop in Scotland in February. But I wanted to show you something else, another way you can add texture and dimension to a felting. This flower is one of the samples that we used for the FELTit experience video. Back in April, I believe, was when we did the felt flowers. And I mean, the flower itself came together quite nicely, but I needed to add something for texture. So I stitched in some lengths of sari silk, recycled sari silk yarn, and I just opened them up and fluffed them up a little bit just to give a little texture to the center of the flower. I haven't decided whether or not I'm going to add anything else. There might be some bugle beads added in here, just sort of sticking out as the stamens in the center, and let this just be some extra curly fluff that's in there. But like I said, lots of works in progress, or UFOs, unfinished objects, in the studio that I'll be finishing up over the next couple of months. Now, many of you know that I went to Scotland to take a 2-day workshop with Moy McKay in February. And over the course of that 2-day workshop, we created 2 felt paintings. And I am finally, I know it's August, I'm finally to the point where I am starting to do the finishing of those paintings. And the first one that I'm working on is the landscape because it's going to need the most finishing work. At least I thought it did. Um, I love the painting as it came out, but if you can see, Nep work is really tough, and that's those little white balls that you see there. But those little white balls were pretty flat until I added just some simple stitching to help pop those, I'm calling them Queen Anne's lace, to pop those flowers out just a little bit. Now I've got some more to do down here in the, I don't know, rhododendrons maybe, in the pinks and purplies, and I picked out some sequins that I think are just going to make those flowers pop. But I've got to get the right center for the seed bead color that I want to use because I don't want it to draw attention. I want the sparkle from these bugle beads to really show up. And so I've got to find the right seed bead to use in the center of that so that it won't detract. And then it's off to work on this area right here. Now, This was just an area in our inspiration photo that Moy had. This is, by the way, the view outside her dining room window, outside her kitchen window, excuse me. And this was just a darker area. We all had um, printouts of the view from her window, which is a regular feature in some of her paintings. And we all had the same photos inspiration. I saw this as a darker area of, I don't know, grass or flowers or something. So I'll be adding some stitching here. I'll be bringing out with stitching a little bit more the little bothy or cabin that's over here, and then I'll be adding a little more detail to the leaves on both sides of the trees, and then I'll be finished. But the stitching really makes a huge difference in this. I mean, and it's simple stitching. I mean, it was just a simple, okay, it's going to start here, it's going to finish here. I am not an embroidery expert by any way, shape, or form. I might be able to do a daisy chain. Um, I can do backstitch really well. That's the one that has been my go-to for stitching to add embellishments. But you don't have to know fancy stitches. It can be as simple as just little seed stitches, or those little long stitches that I use to sort of give that flower feeling to those neps. And on a side note, wool neps are, imagine when you have a sweater that you've worn and you get the little balls on it that you have to use the shaver for. Those are wool neps. And they are a pain in the ass when it comes to felting with them because they don't grab a hold very well at all. But the texture that they offer and the dimension that they offer to your felt project is amazing. You just have to make sure that you lock those fibers down with a little bit of longer fiber over the top of it, just even a whisper of it before you wet felt it in. I would not recommend wool neps for needle felting because you're just going to get them all lined up on your felting needle. Um, and when it came to stitching, those stitches in the centers where I've grabbed a wool nep to sort of be in the center, I had to hold the nep into place as I pulled my thread through. So they're a pain in the ass, but they do give such an amazing amount of texture and dimension to your project. So use them in a wet felting project, but be forewarned that they are difficult. They don't like to felt well. They don't play nice with other fibers, and you might have to stab them into submission with an embroidery needle. So that's my thing on wool neps. But let's go back to things that you can use to embellish. I can see using some of these lucite beads in a felt painting and some of these wire forms that you can get at the craft store, even at Joann's, to add some texture and dimension. Some of them are shiny, some of them are matte, some of them are translucent, some of them are opaque, but these give you a nice little bit to, create some texture and dimension, create some difference in there. I've got, this is my tray of leftover beads that don't belong with anything in particular. They were probably just an assortment that I had for a while, or maybe when I moved to Seattle and then moved back, these were what was left that mom didn't get sorted and organized, because my bead trays are parts trays that you would, see in a workshop or in a garage or something. They were sealed, they were saran wrapped all the way around, taped all the way around, but they didn't stay standing up the way they should. And so when I opened those after I moved back here, um, the number of beads that had fallen out of drawers was astounding. So I just laid down a painter's canvas and just opened them from there, saved the ones that I could. And mom, bless her heart, was here and she was bored and she wanted something to do. I let her sort them. So this is what's left that really wasn't enough to, justify their own single drawer. So this is just the hodgepodge of leftover stuff. If you've got hodgepodges of leftover um, fiber, if you've got hodgepodges of leftover bits of embroidery yarn, the pieces that are this long that you could still use for something, but you don't know what, put them aside. You might be able to use them in your feltings. Um, Sequins are another thing that you can add to give texture and dimension. And sequins come in all kinds of shapes and colors now. It's not just, the old sort of flashy, icky sequins that, you can remember getting at the craft store. I mean, we're talking some beautiful square shapes that have got a shimmer to them. We're talking all kinds of sizes and colors and textures, but you see how the light reflects off of them. Can you imagine using those to just give a little bit of shimmer and texture to your project? Um, you can either stitch them down, using a simple running stitch or a simple back stitch. Um, and that would be a nice way that you could make, I don't know, maybe a trailing vine in a beautiful green in the background or something. Um, or you could use them like I like to use them as individual little bits with a tiny little seed bead holding it into place. Um, it's a little bit more than a French knot. You could probably, depending on the floss or the thread you're using, you might be able to hold the sequin in place with a French knot. I am not a French knot expert. In fact, I just learned finally how to successfully do a French knot in those rhododendrons. You can see them. See if you can see them in there. There are a couple of French knots in there, and I don't know if you can see them, but they finally worked. And they were a good starting point to sort of, when it came to this piece, we just snipped little pieces of a silk type fiber, and then I covered them with just the slightest little bit of wool to hold it in place. But that silk is strong and it didn't want to play nicely. So I went in with the French knots and I added a couple of them, and they're good in places, but there was, they needed something else. They needed, especially when I added the stitching. Let's see, where's my hand? There we go. Especially when I added the stitching for the Queen Anne's lace, it just needed a little bit extra in there. So that's why I'm going to add those really sparkly, fun sequins to give that little extra bit of texture and shimmer to those rhododendrons that are over there. So that's all I have to say about embellishments. If you think it might work, give it a try. You know, see if it'll work. On other matters, classes are live on stabthingsintoexistence.com. There is a class for Create a Creature. There is a class for a mini masterpiece. Both of those are needle felting classes. And there's a class on making a sample of wet felted fabric. I had a number of people requesting how to do this. This is something that you could turn into a bag, you could turn into a journal cover, you could turn into a pouch, you could turn into any number of things. You could turn it into a pencil case or a pen case if you're, drawing or lettering. But we had a lot of interest in doing some wet felted fabric. So those classes are live. You can go to stabthingsintoexistence.com, look at teach, and then you can pull up the classes there. You'll get the class list as soon as you sign up for the class, and sizes for the classes are limited to 10. So don't waste any time, especially if you need to order a kit for one of the needle felting classes and you're going to order it from me or from one of the other resources that I listed on your supplies list. So thanks for being here today. I look forward to talking to you guys again tomorrow. And until then, go stab something into existence. Talk to you later. Bye.